speaker,
Yeah.
author, sales leader, you're a coach, you founder of multiple companies, a new one you just started talking to us about.
What I call the world of distribution, which is the world I grew up in sales, right? My first business I started in 91, I started another one in 2007. Both those were sold, and then now I'm on my third business. That company that bought me went bankrupt because we didn't do our due diligence on them.
Welcome back, everybody. This week, I interview Mr. Glenn Poulos, a serial entrepreneur, a true serial entrepreneur. He founded his first business in 1991, which he eventually sold for tens of millions of dollars. There's a really crazy story, actually, about this sale to a huge public company that did not go as you would expect until he starts another business. He actually starts multiple businesses, but starts another very successful business in 2007, grows it until actually they're about to hit bankruptcy in 2019, but through a strategic pivot, ends up making big change happen. This is an exciting episode. Glenn is a real entrepreneur. Learn a lot from him today. He actually talks a lot about sales also and a book of his. Take some notes, re-listen to the episode if you need to. But for now, let's hop right on in with Mr. Glenn Poulos. Glenn Poulos, man. So AI
Yeah.
entrepreneur, speaker,
Yeah.
author, sales leader, you're a coach, you founder of multiple companies, a new one you just started talking to us about. Thanks again for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to be here, Wayne. It's great.
Man, I mean, so you're doing so many different things. What are you most excited about these days?
Kind of my latest venture in what I call the world of distribution, which is the world I grew up in sales, right? Running sales companies, but the format of the companies are distributors. So we're basically striking relationships with global suppliers, manufacturers of equipment, typically high-tech equipment that need support either in the US or Canada. They don't have a sales team, they're not direct and what have you. And we become distributor for those products locally. And so that's what my first business, I started in 91, I started another one in 2007. Both those were sold, and then now I'm on my third business. I switched countries, I switched markets, I switched technology, and I switched industry. Mainly because I had a no compete in the telecom space, which is where I sold my company. So I'm now in the power generation and distribution space, so working with utilities in the United States, and it's really exciting. And there's lots of changes coming in that space, and so I'm just excited about building up that business. And I like going to work every day. I get a lot out of it, and so that's kind of what I'm doing. I've been dabbling in some AI stuff. It's
Yeah.
interesting. There seems to be a lot of opportunity, but at the same time, it's kind of like also flooded with a lot of people doing the same thing. So the jury's out for me there on how that world will play out, and it's not my natural sort of playground, right? I'm a sort of
Sure.
someone that deals with the hardware aspect of things, buying a product, importing it, reselling it in a local market, providing service, warranty, and support. And I mean I've done that for literally 40 years now, since 1985. And so yeah, so but I wanted to dip my hand in as well because I'm kind of a free agent at the moment, having left my
There you
business to
go.
private equity. And yeah, so lots of things to talk
Exciting.
about, and happy to dig in wherever you like. And
Yeah, no, super exciting. I'm curious, first off, like I said, you're a hardware guy, and we'll dive into all the businesses that you've started and exited, right? Hopefully, we can take a lot of actionable advice from you, Glenn. But
sure.
how is the pivot for you from hardware to AI? And like, where do you think the world is going AI wise?
Yeah, so me personally, I'm quite geeked out on AI, so it's kind of a natural, sort of extension of my, I don't know, circle of interest and influence and interest or whatever. But and so, like I've been since the tools of AI became, public knowledge in the last couple of years, I started using them daily. And I've got accounts with most of the major kinds of products. One would think, Gemini, ChatGPT, and I use other ones like Paraphraser and Undetectable and Midjourney, and I use all that stuff whenever and wherever possible. And
Nice.
but also I'm seeing, how it can do heavy lifting in terms of like contract analysis. There's so many areas it can be, from medical to this to that. But I mean, in my world, a lot of paper comes across my desk, right? So I mean, instead of me having to scour it the first time, now I can actually just drop these
Nice.
documents into AI and get them to give me a first pass and figure out how much of my lawyer's time you know, I need to engage and things like that, right? And so my efforts and sort of my foray into AI was more to try to figure out companies that needed help to adopt to assess where they were at with AI and then to adopt some of
Mhm.
the agents and tools that they could make use of. Because I find a lot of them are kind of in this holding pattern where, of course, we're interested in AI, but they're not really spending any money except for maybe a few people have a license for this or that, or, like a co-pilot license here or there, or they're using, in a few, but they don't have a corporate mandate to get it rolled out across their entire organization. They're not there yet, right? And
Sure.
so that's where I kind of saw the opportunity for myself was to help them to assess where they were at, classify their people, train their people, and then implement the best in class tools that they could use in their business to get the most out of AI, whether it's a off the shelf agent or a custom written and modified agent.
Sure. Right. And this is your new company, Forward Path AI, right?
Yeah, that's who I'm working with. It's a Canadian company. I joined them. I'm running some of their US operation basically, and they have a significant amount of talent in terms of developing the tools and deploying them. And where I'm
Mhm.
working
Mhm.
on is in the business development in the United States market, which is a vast market of infinite opportunity. They're more Canadian focused, so I'm using their skill sets and their pedigree as a launching pad, so I'm not starting from scratch. After starting two businesses in 91 and 2007, I realized that this time around it's better to, for me at least, speaking for myself, to partner with a company and or to buy an existing business
Nice.
when I'm looking to move forward, because there's literally millions of companies out there, right? And it was fun starting companies and I really enjoyed it. But I mean, those first years can be very slow. And I said to myself, now, if I'm going to start a business like the distributor company I bought in the US in the power space, they've been in business 20 years. All their bank accounts are set up, all their Visa, MasterCard's done, insurance is set up. They've got a significant vendor relationship. They've got
Nice.
200
Nice.
customers.
Nice.
I don't have to go out and explain who we are, right? And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and there's for all those million customers, there's quite a few owners that are getting old and wanting to retire and
Mhm.
looking for a
Mhm.
way of transitioning out of their business. And a lot of them can be very flexible in their approach to getting their money out, right? It's not just all about private equity and venture capital, right? So there's a lot of, small businesses that have a nice little business, that you could come in and grow and nurture, but you don't have to like start from scratch, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Glenn, you're obviously seasoned, super experienced, two different businesses you started, sold, and now you're buying businesses. In 2025, should people be buying businesses or starting new ones?
Yeah, so right now I'm kind of like biased, right? So it's just my opinion, right? But my opinion, and a lot of people ask me, "Oh, what should I do? What should I do?" Right? I'm unless it's like, seriously unique, like in some way where you have to start it from scratch, I would say try to buy a business that's already up and running, right? Mainly because of that runway of getting going, that it can be so time consuming, it can chew up your financial runway that you've set up for yourself, right? And
Mhm.
you go in, you don't have any customers. So who are your customers? None. You're going to be the first one, right? Now, I always said in my the business I had just sold, that, most good ideas start with a piece of business that you didn't deserve and you earn all the rest, right? Like sort of you kind of luck into that first order, right? The first customer, the first order, the first deal kind of thing. You got to, of course, work to keep it and deliver on it, and then the rest you earn everyone after that. But nothing really happens until you get a lucky break, right? And at this point, maybe it's because I'm a little bit older and I don't need to feel that I built it from scratch. I'd rather like get over those hurdles and just go after,
Mhm.
because there's nowadays with you can find businesses that can really benefit from the newer tools that are available, bringing new marketing in, bring new branding in, bringing e-commerce, perhaps, updating their website, update their marketing. And the new owner's done a great job, but he's kind of wants to transition out, and he hasn't really put the spit and polish on it for the last few years or whatever, right? And that's an area for you to get some incremental growth early on, and then you can, of course, aggregate, find similar competitors to that space, and aggregate them up into maybe a little bit more of a medium size, entity, right?
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I mean, those early hurdles, like you said, of getting your first customers. I like your perspective that that first customer client sale is often you kind of have to luck into it so you can start to prove your worth and start to build your
Right,
skill set. And so your
right.
advice, your opinion these days is find a business that's running, that the operations are good, it has customers, and then we now have the opportunity to polish it,
Bolt
bring it
on.
into the
Exactly.
21st century, build on top of
Yeah,
it, huh?
yeah. And bolt onto it. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and now I'm kind of at that point where because I sold to private equity, I've also seen how the way private equity does it, they come and they buy up and they roll up, right? They just buy businesses and roll them up bigger. They take this one, this one, this one, this one, and let's say 10, $5 million companies, and then they become ostensibly a $50 million company, right?
Interesting.
But what I learned was it's not quite the mathematics never works that way in the real world. And of course, I'm not an expert at private equity, don't get me wrong, but what I've
Mm.
seen is that the 50 million doesn't kind of it's not like 50 million becomes like 70 million. It's more like the 50 million you got to struggle to make it not be 30 million, right? And because you
Understood.
lose the magic in each one that you buy in the integration process, right? So now I'm trying to decide, you know, do I take the small business I bought and just try to grow it, right? Which is, taking my own advice. Or do I buy, another small competitor and try to double my size, right? And I
Mm,
honestly, if you ask me to vote today, I'm voting more on the lines that I'm feeling more on the lines that I think my money and time is better spent just growing the business that I've got. And
nice.
rather than trying to make the whole greater than the sum of the parts through acquisition. And
Yeah.
because I've seen it can be hard to blend the culture and the just the whole business model. It's not just like it's I don't know. I'm not sure if it's fair to compare it to, but like where if you're a dentist and you buy another dentist office down the street, of course now you have twice as many
Mhm.
customers and you can let go some of the accounting staff and the back office and you get some savings. But when you're buying different businesses that operate with different vendors and different customers, I don't know. It's not quite as simple as it looks, right? So
Yeah, definitely not. 'Cause, I mean, you can make that argument that the basis of business, everyone is the same, but still different customers, different moving
yeah,
pieces, different operations that
yeah.
run. In the AI space, I'm curious, right? Because we could adapt AI. That could be one of the polish that you do for it. If you buy a business, adapt AI into it. What do you think? What are most businesses getting wrong right now when it comes to AI?
Well, I guess the right off the top of my head, I would say that they're not taking it from a like I don't think they're taking enough of an academic approach to it. They're just letting whoever the internal AI guy is, they're kind of letting him drive the boat anecdotally in terms of what he or she thinks is the right next step. And that,
Mm,
because it's not like, let's say, if you're taking over and you want to apply a new finance model to a business or whatever, then there's a guy who's been in finance for 30 years. He knows the textbook approach approach to to finance, and he can put it
Finance.
in. It's so people are just sort of like winging it, right? And the you know and so that's where I came up with the idea of like trying to assess where each person in your business is and categorize them, and then look for where you can find opportunities to improve through automation, right? And then try to bring in experts in each one of those areas to to apply the right correct thing. Because a lot of people are like, oh, let's just get everyone a co-pilot license, right? None of them are trained. Nobody's really using it. It's $500 a person per year or whatever. It's not cheap. And I'm not
Mhm.
sure that, and it's very inconsistent, sort of deployment, right? There's no science behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but I mean, even these days, so you're saying that you take a more academic approach, right? Use the finance example of the guy in the back office that has all this experience. AI is so new. There isn't anybody that has 40 years experience. And so
Right.
what could this academic approach look like other than hiring someone like you and forward AI to teach them?
Well, the biggest mistake I see people making is sort of treating it like it's a magic trick rather than a skill set, right? And
Okay.
so you can't really expect instant results. And you need to take the time to figure out how to meaningfully work it into your workflow, right? So the other mistake I see people making is not allowing human judgment to take over at the last step as well, right? Like assuming that AI
Yes.
is giving you the correct answer, right?
Sure.
So I think people are either overhyping it or underestimating what it can do. And they have to, I guess, build the from the ground up that skill set of discipline on how to deploy it correctly. And I think that's why people are struggling, because it's like we don't really know what to do, right? And so,
Mhm.
but I think in the short term, you're going to see standard agents come about that like for instance, the areas where it's really obvious to me is like in contract analysis and things like that, where you can just save vast amounts of time on 50, 80 page contracts, right? Like AI can just rip those apart so quickly and get you right to the heart of anything that's business fundamental to your business that you need to look at in this contract, and where you need to get a little, but don't let AI give you the answer there. Then you need to get the lawyer to comment on the indemnity clause, the insurance requirement, the turnover requirements, perhaps the purchase requirements,
Mhm.
terms, things like that. But allow the tool, I don't know. I'm just kind of grasping at different aspects of it, because there's
Sure.
just so many areas where it can be deployed. The other one is like, which is not really my shtick, if I can say that, is in the area of code development, sort of,
Yeah.
generating base models of code. I mean, it's so good at that. I'm using it more for business development, like so identifying customers, identifying your messaging to customers, developing those messaging, responding to those customer message, developing leads,
Mhm.
responding to RFPs and analyzing, looking on bid sites and other opportunity sites for areas where you don't have enough human time to look for opportunities
Nice.
for your company to grow, right? Like there's job
Nice.
boards and bidding boards and
Oh yeah.
yeah. And so we often struggled over the last 40 years to find someone that could go on these sites for us and find bids for us to bid on, right? And over the years we've had some people that were really good at it and some people that kind of sucked at it, right? And so now you can set up agents to scour the sites, and they're not just looking for keywords, they're actually downloading the bid, looking at the tender itself, and then looking at the technical or commercial aspects of those documents, and saying, this is something that is up our alley because we've done this job for so and so and so and so. And so whereas your
Yeah.
person that's sitting there drinking coffee looking at bid boards, they're going to just scan right by it and they might miss it,
Sure.
right? And that's an area where, you know, it's just like using a machine to pick up something. It can pick up things, vastly heavier than you could pick up yourself, right? It's the same concept. You can just dig so much
Nice.
deeper. And
Oh,
And so I think that's where in my world, right, at least where I can see helping people to deploy AI to the betterment of their business development and and their marketing and stuff like that.
I love that, right? Helping them deploy it to business development, to improving their marketing. For me, when it comes to AI right now, people are messing up by simply not being educated, by being afraid of it. So the two examples that you gave there, right? You mentioned coding for AI, and then you started talking about business development, right? And people aren't even realizing the potential that's already here today and crushing it, much less the potential for the future. So we need to steer into it heavier. I think that's where most businesses are messing
Yeah,
up, is that they're just treating it like, okay, who's the youngest person in the office that's the most interested?
right,
Let us know if you come across something that might help.
right, right.
Versus, no, let's look at every piece of our operations and go
Exactly.
find where the leading tools are right now that can help drive
Yeah,
us forward.
yeah,
Glenn, let's take
yeah.
a little rewind. You said you started your
Okay.
first business in 1991.
Yes.
What were you up to before you started your first business?
Well, as I like to tell everyone, I got kicked out of the government in 1985 for being too aggressive at my job. My boss said, "You're in the wrong field. You should go into sales," right? And I mean, I guess he saw something in me at the time. I was in my early 20s, and he thought, "Dude, like you're not in the right space at the government. It's not the right environment for you." And so I took him at his word, and I got a job
Huh?
in sales, right? And I
Hmm.
and I realized, I had a whole series of epiphanies, right? And lessons that I learned. And later we can shamelessly plug my book where I write down, I have 57 of those tips that I learned in the last 40 years, right? And that's what my book, Never Sit in the Lobby, is all about. But I realized a little early on in sales, it's kind of like oh man, the word's escaping me right now, but it's kind of like a cheat code or whatever for people. Like, for instance, if you want to make 400K a year, one way you can do it is you can go and get a brain surgeon degree, right? And I mean, I don't know how many years it takes, but it's probably 15 or more, right? And
Sure.
so, but a sales guy can actually make 400K in his second year,
Wow.
depending upon the market or world that he goes into, with
Yep.
an unfair share of not getting all that education. I'm not saying he could be uneducated, but I'm just saying he doesn't need to get a master's, PhD, graduate degree, 4 years residency, specialty, and so it's really hard, except for, in entrepreneurial businesses, other than sales, to figure out how you can get from zero to those kinds of crazy numbers.
Mhm.
Accountants can't do it. I mean, like even lawyers, they make good money or whatever, but it's years and years. It's school, it's this, it's paying your bills, becoming partner. Whereas in sales, you can really cheat code your way, right? And of course, I feel there's rules you need to follow in order to make good money. But then I realized, after a few years of being in sales, that in addition to sort of, being able to make a really good amount of money, but not having to go to school for 10 years, that when you own the sales company, you have even more leverage, right? Because when you're a salesman, you can only leverage yourself and your own customers that are part of your territory that are assigned by the owners of the company you work for, right? But when you
Mm.
own the business, every salesperson you hire contributes and they make their good money and they leverage themselves and they're exercising the cheat code, but they're all contributing to the bottom line of your business. And every time they sell, you sell, right? And you get paid when they get paid. And so by owning a sales company, so I worked for a company for almost 6 years, 5.5 years, and then I approached them with an idea to split their company and allow me to get a piece of ownership in a new piece of technology, and they said no. And so
Okay.
and it was on this newfangled technology which they thought was a waste of time, which is the cell phone. And of course that didn't go anywhere, right? And so I split off and started a company in telecom servicing the ever expanding and building cellular network, right? So on the back end side, not selling cell phones, but selling the network equipment that build the cell phone network, all that stuff. That was the business that I went into. And it was called Millimeter Wave Technologies. and only now are the cell phones talking openly about the millimeter wave frequencies, right? But 40 years ago almost, or I guess in 91 is not 40, but 35, 36 years ago, something like
Yeah.
that. I saw what the impacts that MM wave technologies would have, millimeter wave technology would have, and so I started a business, and um, and I thought it was funny that they sort of refused me to joint venture with me. But anyways, I partnered with another fellow, and actually two people, one in Montreal, one in Ottawa, and I was in Toronto, and we ran that business for 15 years, and then we sold it,
Wow.
and then I pivoted slightly, and I was thinking like I can't really retire fully at this point, and so I didn't know how to get a job, and so I just started another company doing a similar thing but slightly different, so that I was on side for my competitive agreements, right?
Yeah, nice. There we go. It sounds like that's currently what's going on today again. But
It is, yeah,
so interesting. So you almost got, you say, sort of kicked out of what the government or who you're working
yeah,
for to go into sales, actually. And sales is such a direct path to be able to fast forward your finances, right? To take control.
yeah.
There's, like you said, there's no other jobs really. I don't know what brain surgeons are making. It's strange to say that I hope that they're making more than most
I
sales
hope
guys.
so. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure, but like what a great path that you went, right?
yeah.
When you heard about this new technology coming out, right? You got into telecom, you said you guys are selling sort of that back end network equipment. How did you jump all in? Like there must have been doubts in your mind that this technology was going to last even.
Yeah, so that's not really the way it went down. And the I was like, I'm not sure if this is a blessing or a curse, right? But it was kind of like I just compl my. It's kind of same thing with AI. Like it's really only a year or two kind of back. But like the second AI came out, I was geeked out, and I was like, I was all in, right? There's no waiting period for me, right? And when
Mhm.
wireless telecom came online, I knew that it was the future, right? And I kind of my territory that I grew up in, my sales territory and my geography that I lived in was where BlackBerry was formed, right? And BlackBerry was my customer. And the I called on BlackBerry when it was literally like a little pocket calculator kind of thing with a radio bolted to the back of it, right? And that was after I started my business, but I mean, I knew that wireless was the way it was going to go, and the business that I was in was more general purpose, and they had like one or two lines that dabbled in it. And I'm like, look, let me take these lines and develop it into another full scale business with 20 or 30 vendors in that space. And they're like, no, 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 just stick to your knitting. And I literally quit my job the next day. I approached them, they said no. The next day I had quit my job. And so when people are like, how did you do that? Right. And a lot of people ask me about starting a business and what it takes to make that step. I'm kind of the damn the torpedoes, but and that's not what I recommend people to do. But that's just the way I behave. I kind of go all in. Now, over the years, I've gone all in a little quickly on things and regretted it later. Like for instance, in my second business, we got all into drones, right? And I mean, we did okay here and there and blah, it wasn't like a colossal failure, but in the end, we had to sell it off and get rid of it because it was such a distraction and it was poorly thought out. And and I mean, they use the drones in the wireless space to analyze towers and stuff, but not at a scope that can be commercialized repetitively. It's very ad hoc. They buy a couple drones here and
Mm.
there and whatever,
So you were
and
marrying those two
so
ideas together when drone
yeah,
technology came around.
yeah.
You're trying to marry it into
Yeah.
telecom.
And again, we went all in, and I mean, I just picked up and DJI, was a very famous drone
Yeah.
manufacturer. I mean, like I just picked up the phone, and I called the head of, US operations, and I just, and I just like, I went from like zero to like, I'm all in, right? And, and sold them on the whole wireless piece, and they signed us up, and, but, it was just too different. And so, that's why I'm just cautioning people about just damn the torpedoes, right? But I'm more like, now I'm more like make sure you have a nest egg to fall back on, either money in the bank to pay yourself for a year and a half or 2 years, or a spouse that can feed you or something like that, right? And have all of those ducks lined up, and then damn the torpedoes and come what may and take the chance, right? But you do need the table stakes that are required in order to run a business, and before you take that leap, right? In
Yeah,
91, I
yeah.
just said, screw it, and I just quit. I said, I'll figure it out, right?
You quit, you jumped in full force. You said you just figure
Yeah,
it out. But let's take this a little more methodically, shall we? Right. So you
yeah.
jumped in full force, right? You ended up creating a huge success. So there's other businesses you jumped in full force and flopped. How do you recommend people start today for businesses?
Well, like I said, right? Like that's why buying a business that like especially if it looks undervalued. Like I mean, the company that I bought was a great business, 20 years in business, celebrating its 20th anniversary, but the website looked 10 years old, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
they had 5 or 6 vendor relationships, and I thought, well, geez, in the market they're serving, they could have at least 10, right? So I'm just doing the quick math, and I'm thinking a brand, and so in that sense, look for undervalued or things you can polish up and get an instant sort of gain, right? And that's a lot of times what private equity does as well. They're looking for quick wins, right? Come in,
mm.
they integrate the accounting systems. They get savings across, by rolling these businesses together, right? And combining the teams. But I mean, if you're starting from scratch, you need a minimum viable product. You need at least one customer that's already said yes, right? And you need 18 to 24 months of pay, so that you can build the business, because you're going to have to get all that stuff set up. And you have to do it contemporaneously. Like you can't like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to set up the business for a year and then I'm going to make my first sales call. You got to be making the sales call, talking to the bank, setting up your accounts, setting up your, accounting systems, hiring, shipping and receiving. Where's your products coming from? You need a warehouse. Do you need, support? Do you need front end support, back end support, warranty service, tech support? What do you need, right? You got to do all that at the same time. Right? But you need a minimum viable product. You need at least one customer that you didn't deserve, and you need enough money in the bank to feed yourself for 18 months. And that's
Right,
really the key.
right.
Because a lot of people,
That's
they
like,
just come up with the mousetrap. It's like, oh, I invented the
mm,
greatest mousetrap. I'm gonna be a millionaire, but etc. I'm like, hey man,
yeah.
the world is littered with the best mousetrap, and show me a customer that wants a new mousetrap, and then I'll look at your mousetrap, right?
There you go. I think that's a great piece there, right? So of course you have the MVP, the minimal viable product, right? Then you said have a customer already, and
Yeah,
then get the 18 to
yeah,
24 months of runway
yeah,
before you jump in. I mean,
yes,
a lot, I hear a lot these days about sell it before you build it. Does that make
yes,
sense? Do you have a similar
absolutely. That's
belief?
the same thing I'm saying, right? Yeah, like I mean, it doesn't matter how, and now with all these software tools and whatever, people are like, and some of them do take off and become billion-dollar products, but a lot don't, right? Because they're not
Yeah.
working with the customer at the same time, and that you really need to know someone's going to buy it, right? And so you're kind of building it for that specific customer, or someone's going to the specific customer or organization or something's going to buy it from you if you design it and build it, right? Not
Yeah.
not just hey, I'm going to design this and then go flog it to the world like Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? And so
Yeah. Perfect. No, I'm with you completely. All right, Glenn, let's fast forward. So 2007
yeah,
rolls around. Had you already sold your first business? And then what did you
yeah.
pivot into?
So yeah, so there's a long story, a whole nother podcast worth what happened. I sold the business to a public company, and to make a
Okay.
long story short, I ended up becoming a multi-millionaire, and
Cool.
I was 46, I think, at the time, approximately 45, 46, something like that, anyways.
Yeah.
And they gave me this all share deal. I got enough money to buy a sports car, and I got millions and millions of dollars of shares, almost $10 million of shares. And
Okay.
in the company. And to make a long story short, the public company went bankrupt and the shares became worthless. while I was stuck inside of an not trading, but insider trading restriction, meaning I couldn't sell any shares. And so
No.
I ended up giving my business away after 15 years, which is why I needed to get a job, right? Which is why I had to start a new company. And so I went
My
from just,
goodness.
and I was making great money running the company, year over year, I was making
Sure.
good money and I lived a great life and everything was fine. But then I became this multimillionaire when I sold the business,
Yeah.
but I couldn't
Yeah.
sell I couldn't capitalize on the money. And then within the 18 months of selling the company, that company that bought me went bankrupt because we didn't do our due diligence on them, although they did theirs on us. And
Sure.
they ended up sucking all the money out of our business. They used to say, we threw off so much cash and we were so dumb, right? And people are like, how could you do that? Well, this was a public company that was famous in Canada. And like it was a household name in the wireless space. It really was. The owner
Huh.
later went to jail for fraud, but many years later after I'd started my next company. And so I was able to get out from under any restrictions and what have you. And I started a similar business, but I was able to change
Nice.
some of the things in my new company that that I didn't like the way we were doing our customer service and things in the last business. And so I
Nice.
wanted to build a customer first business going forward. And that's when I started Gap Wireless.
Yeah.
And
Wireless.
yeah, and I'm the G and the P in Gap Wireless. And that's how I came up with the name of Gap Wireless.
Oh, there you go. I like it. So you said so it was oh man, what an unfortunate circumstance that
Yeah,
happened. A public company buys you all. You don't think you have to do due diligence on them, right? It's like, no, this is a
right.
household, massive company, right? The only due diligence I need to do is can you guys fund the check right now? And I believe that you're going to be
Exactly.
around. And geez. And so then it turned around, so you had to get another job or start another company. And so you guys decided to be more customer centric in Gap Wireless, huh? How did
That's
that
right.
decision come to be?
It was just organic, and I just didn't like the way we served our customers, where it wasn't a customer first approach, right? And so and one of the reasons why I wrote the book was how to get, act, and stay in front of your customers and be a pleasure to do business with always. And so we built the business from the ground up as wanting to be a pleasure to do business. Our internal things were like fast and fair, meaning, we weren't the cheapest, but we were fast and we were fair, right? In our approach, results matter and things like that. These are some of the core values of the business. And and we just, it really resonated with the customers and they all always echoed it over time. And there were other competitors that were really viable and, significant competitors, and they were doing well as well, but they weren't a pleasure to do business with, right? You,
Sure.
you know what I'm saying? So like that's the difference, right? And so, it wasn't like that, we were the only ones doing anything in the space, but we were doing it with that pleasure aspect to it, like being, sorry for my dog barking in the background. And
No, that's great. I think that's a great tip for everybody out there, right? Most businesses these days have a direct competitor, someone that is doing the almost exact same thing as you are. Stand apart by being a pleasure to do business with. You said you guys are doing it faster and more fair, right?
right, yeah,
I
exactly.
absolutely love that. But Glenn, I think I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in this business, it wasn't all roses and daisies. You all nearly went
No,
bankrupt and had to lay
we
off a
did
good
in
amount of people, huh?
2019.
What
Yeah,
happened?
we grew to 80 people by 2019. We had made the mistake of migrating into the service side of the thing as well, which was a tactical error of epic proportions. In 2010, the Bell was building a vast new 3G network, Odyssey, and they were scrambling for people, and we decided to bid on some of it, and we won it, very readily. And we ended up realizing, well, we couldn't really do it. So we basically kind of ran a sister business all under the same roof or whatever, one doing the selling all the equipment, one installing it all, right? And two things happened. One, some of our customers were installers that resented us for cutting their grass, right? For
Oh,
installing on their
sure.
backyard, right? never make that mistake again. And the other thing is running two Bobs in a truck is distinctly different than selling Bob a truck, right? And so
Uh,
we were really good at selling all the things in the truck and on the truck, but we weren't very good at running the trucks. Totally different
Interesting.
business. And it ballooned in people, it ballooned in scope and size. And by 2019, it had grown to the point where we were losing over $1 million a year, and it was going to like basically crush us financially. And we had to, and so we essentially went from 80 people to 29 people in one day. And so
One
we
day.
one day, yeah, one day. We agreed to a large competitor to sell off the business, and a large swath of the people went. The drone division went the same day to a different competitor, and there were a few adjustments of staff. And at the end, we went from 80 to 29 people, and then that was in 2019. In 2020 through 2022, we had record profits, and we sold the business for a record amount in 2022. It was a genius. Looking back, it was a genius move, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
but a few months later, we would have been bankrupt. We would have been insolvent, basically.
Wow. Wow, man. So you had to make it move quickly, and then profits changed so
Yeah,
drastically as well. And so when you
yeah.
have to, you know, man, you're on the edge of bankruptcy, and you have to cut such a huge portion of your business. How do you continue to lead effectively when seemingly everything is falling apart?
So that is fundamentally what the purpose of the leader is, right? And so that's where the rubber meets the road, right? And even my business partner had said, he said, I never would have been able to make that decision. I never would have been able to pull the trigger the way, because I just came in on the Monday and I said, we got to do this, this, and this, right? And he said, like, well, when are we going to do it? I said, it's going to be done by 10 a.m. And so we called the competitor. We'd already been speaking to them. We knew that, like, we had things in our back pockets and stuff. And like, that's what people need with a leader, is for you to make the decisions, because every 99.9% of the people want to follow someone. They
Mm,
want to
mm,
follow a
mm.
strong leader. So if you're put in that role, lead, make the decision, stick to it, and move forward. Even if you make a mistake, make a new decision, move forward again. And they'll say, this guy, like, it's the failure to execute that people resent and don't appreciate, right? And so that's where the rubber meets the road with a leader, and when you're put on the battlefield and you've got troops standing behind you, you need to lead them. You need to make the decisions, and and do the next right thing. And that's what your
Yeah.
job is. And that's really the fundamental role of the leader in the business, right? Is to set the vision for the company, and then to make decisions that allow everyone in all the other departments to do their jobs. We're going to do this, then we're going to do that, we're going to do that, and then this. We're going to cut back here, and we're going to invest over there, right?
The rubber hits the road, right? People want to follow a leader. They're looking for someone to
Yeah,
take charge, to make decisions, to follow. As you said, if it's the wrong decision, then you just pivot and make another decision, right? But
exactly.
keep executing, keep moving
Yeah.
forward. Talk to us a little bit about your book. I mean, so you've over 40 years experience. I'm guessing a lot of it is culminated into this book.
Yeah, and a lot of it is for the guy or gal, of course, that's making sales calls out there in front of customers, and or even the business owner, to reflect on their sales teams and what have you. But it's really about how to get, act, and stay in front of your customers, and to be a
Mm,
pleasure to do business with always, right? And so,
nice.
and again, and people are like, "What do you mean by that?" I mean, like, well, don't be a pain in the ass, right? Like, that's what the book is about, right? It's like how to be a good salesperson. So it's basically 57 tips that I learned in the field. And one of them is never sit in the lobby, right? And so I basically started writing down these rules that I saw good salespeople adopting through their careers. Everything from, like how to behave when you show up at a client, to how to behave at lunch or dinner with the client, right? And how to be a good listener, and how not to be a pain in the ass, and how to develop a genuine rapport with your client, and how to lose gracefully and quickly. And so these are just all the rules that I follow. And I mean, and people always asking me things, like, well, what do you do in this situation? And then I just basically give them a title to one of the chapters, like Well, I don't know what to talk to the customer about. I'm like, hey, just show up with something in your hand and something in your mind, right? And
Nice.
the rest will and it, there's a lot of very short titles, short chapters in the book. You can flip to any page and learn a rule at any point. You don't have to start in the beginning. It's not a like a university course, right? It's 57
No.
tips on what to do and what not to do. And
Never, yep, never sit in the lobby. 57 winning sales factors to grow businesses.
yeah.
Uh, if you could right now give us one of the standout tips that people could put into action, what comes to mind?
Well, like so, yeah. So at the beginning, there's kind of a litany of them, right? But where it's like never sit in the lobby, always have something in your hand, something in your mind. When you're there, always ask them for a mini tour of where you're at, right? Always get behind the front door because that's where you learn about the business, right? Once you get behind the door and you show up, never forget a face, right? When you're waiting for because you're not going to sit in their lobby, you're going to wait in the car until the appropriate time, then walk in and be standing, something in your hand, something in your mind. When you're in the car, you want to like open your phone and you want to remember everyone's face that you've ever met in that customer, so that when you ask the guy for a tour of where your equipment's going to be installed or whatever, you're walking through the building, you see people you met 2 years ago, instantly you know their name because you remembered it in the car, right? And then some of the other things, and I know I'm not giving you one, I'm giving you like lots, but that's the whole
Great.
point of the book, right? It's the way they go together. One of them is, like I'd rather be last than second, right? Like lose quickly because second place is the first loser, right? Like I'd rather lose quickly and then race to my next client while everyone else is engaged in a battle they may or may not win because I know that I can't win. So the moment I realize I can't win a deal, I recuse myself and I go to the next deal. I don't like bring in factory specialists and take them out to fancy dinners or whatever because I know over 40 years you learn when you're going to win and when you're not, right?
Mm,
And you know, the but I mean when people ask me what's the golden rule, that I always tell them to pull
sir.
out of the book, it's that you only get forever to make another impression. Okay. And so that's what the rule I give to young people that are trying to establish their career, which is like, you know, so many times you learn about a guy who's like 60 years old and he's the CEO of something, something, and then you find out that he started in the warehouse, right? And it's like, how did he go from the warehouse to CEO, right? And I'm like, well, he probably did what I did, which was I just figured out who I had to kill between the warehouse and the CEO job to get that job, right? Because really that's what it is. It's like outshining all of your competition. And I did that through a series of always uh, demonstrating a good impression, right? Not never
Mm,
sloughing off on the job. Don't be on social media when the boss walks by. Do your best at trade shows, right? And so and these things make huge differences when they're assigning the next role to people, right? And so I go on at length on how to demonstrate that you're a great choice for them to make when the next job comes up, so that you can go from warehouse guy to warehouse manager to district manager to office general manager to area manager to vice president to whatever president and CEO, right? And so yeah, so there's a long
wow.
chapter on that.
Nice. One interesting quote. You only get forever to make another impression, right? Every impression matters so much, especially when you're talking
Exactly.
about these guys that are building, they're climbing their way up the ladder. Keep growing, keep changing, keep making more first
Yeah.
impressions.
Yeah.
So Glenn, you've done the business thing. You've sold companies, eight-figure exits. These days, what matters most to you?
Honestly, like the thought of because I sold the business in 2022 and I agreed to stay on, and then my contract sort of ended at the end of December, right? So it was kind of like a 3-year thing, which is longer than most actually. But I realized how much I just like going to work every day, and I'm not ready to like I don't golf or anything like that, right? It's not like I'm ready to have this life of leisure, and so. I'm just that's why I bought that small business, was something for me to work on day to day, and I can get up every morning and it keeps me honest, and and I just love it. And now I'm thinking like, I'm 63 today, as a matter of fact. Today's my birthday. And
Wow.
I'm thinking by 65, 66, I'm hoping I can flip the company, and then I'll probably try to take up a sport or a hobby. But for now, I'm just getting up and trying to do the next right thing. And
Yeah,
I divide my time between Florida and Southern Ontario, and chasing the good weather. And
there you go.
yeah, and I'm just
Nice.
enjoying the process.
I like enjoying the process. You've got another business to keep getting up in the morning, keep exploring, right? Keep trying new
Yeah,
things. Glenn, happy birthday. Thank you for being here today.
thank
Like,
you.
so
Thank you.
appreciative. And so I always like to wrap up around the theme of the show is legacy, right? And so with Journey to Legacy, you have had an amazing journey. You've made a big impact on countless people. I always like to ask, what does the word legacy even mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of means to me like not, I like trying to have an impact, a positive impact on everyone. And it's not really just like about what you build, it's about, kind of what you leave behind and the tools you give other people to build upon. It doesn't, and it's not about like leaving the business to a specific person or whatever, but it's
Mhm.
like helping, people around you to do what's the best thing for them, right? And not, and so I love helping people. And and my coaching is not something I charge for, right? My coaching is more of a collaborative thing where I meet other entrepreneurs and we share ideas, and I give them help and they help me, and I pass it on to the next generation. And I love just mentoring and joining, like mentorship groups and things like that. And that, to me, that's kind of what legacy means. And yeah, and yeah. So, and I'm hoping that it survives me and they can look back upon me fondly, right? And
Yeah.
I was when I retired from having sold private equity, and then on December 31st, I finished, right? And like three grown men cried the day I left. And so
Wow.
I thought, wow, that's a legacy, you know? And
Definitely.
so yeah,
That's a huge impact that you've made, right? And
yeah,
actually the mentorship piece, the giving back piece, I'm so pleased to say that I hear it quite often. And I think that's what true legacy is these days,
yeah,
right? Is actually
yeah,
helping individual people, not just leaving millions of dollars behind. And
right.
so, Glenn, thank you for your impact greatly. If anybody listening wants to go learn more about your businesses, about a little bit more about, your speaking or your coaching, where's the best place for them to go?
They can go to my website, glennpoulos.com, or just connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm very approachable. I'm on there every day, and talk to lots of people. Happy to collaborate with anybody. So
Great. Glenn, thank you so much. It's really
yeah,
appreciated.
thanks, Wayne.
That's a wrap, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Please head over to social. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Great takeaways. Glenn's perspective on the future of business and AI was amazing. His tips for sales, right, from his book, Never Sit in the Lobby, 57 Winning Sales Factors to Grow Businesses. These tips are great. I'm going to go get this book because they're short, quick, actionable tips, right? Things like when you walk in, have something physical and have something in your mind ready to talk about. Review people's names before you go inside. The list just goes on and on. He was just spitting them off. Man, it's great. And also, here's probably my biggest takeaway is that people want to follow a leader. 99.9% of people want to follow. They want to be instructed. Confidently do so. And if those instructions that you give end up being wrong or not ideal, pivot and give more instruction. Keep moving forward. I love that takeaway so much. Everybody out there, if you need help, if you need accountability, improving yourself mentally, physically, financially, I invite you to come join us over at journeytolegacy.com. We are working together to make a huge, meaningful impact and leave a lasting legacy on this world. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. You have been listening to Journey to Legacy.